their open yard, yes. If they can store these vehicles within an enclosed structure, they are permitted to have as many of these types of vehicles as they can fit in those structures.
If
This
I
does
can
not
add,
apply to zone commercial, though.
that's it.
Correct.
This is just residential. Okay, any other questions? Okay, section D.
Okay, this pertains to equipment and things that would be allowed to be stored on the rear, front, side, and sides and tops of vehicles. The rear, we would not want to see any attachments or trailers permanently or attached to vehicles when stored at residences. The front would be, snowplows would be permitted within season, but they must be properly removed and properly stored within 30 days after the last measurable snowfall of the season or by March 31st, whichever comes first. The sides, again, when a vehicle is stored, parked in a residential district, you don't expect ladders, water buckets, shovels, whatever, to be hanging on the side of the vehicle. That can become a safety problem for people walking down the sidewalk if the vehicle happens to be adjacent to the sidewalk. So again, we don't want any storage on the sides of the vehicles. Tops of the vehicles, we would not allow any storage on top except for in a storage rack, which does not exceed 18 inches in height. And when there is a storage rack on top of the vehicle, the overall height from the ground to the top of that storage rack cannot exceed 8 feet, including the equipment that's in the rack. The reason for this is, again, is we don't want, it's a theft deterrent more than anything else when you limit the amount of height that is stored on there. If you permit people to store 5-6 feet of ladders on top of their vehicle, it becomes an attractive nuisance and a theft problem. So in actuality, what we're trying to do with this is not only address the aesthetics, but also reduce a threat, a safety risk that we see in the community, or could potentially see in the community. As far as pickup truck beds, equipment other than permanently attached and the storage of material visible above the top of the trailer and pickup bed shall be prohibited, meaning this is mainly to address maybe the gentlemen that go around and pick up the scrap metal out of the garbage on collection days, and that material, when after it's collected, should be taken to a proper facility. It should not be brought back, left in the vehicle, all with the jagged edges exposed and out there for everyone to see and potentially be injured on. That is what we're trying to address with this issue.
Any
Also,
questions about the
okay,
section?
sure.
Well,
Alderman Lewitton.
I don't know, but I don't think I could project when the last measurable snowfall is going to happen.
Correct.
You don't know until the season is over when it was. So, I mean, I would delete last measurable snowfall because nobody can project when it is. Or anybody could say, well, we had a big one in February. That's it. No more snow. I think you should remove last measurable snowfall and just say March 31st. And we've had measurable snow in April. I mean, I remember the first White Sox game being snowed out a few years ago. Should we really say March 31st when we know we have every once in a while a freak late spring snow?
What we would like to have is some form of time frame in there, rather than just last measurable snowfall, because then we might get into the situation where you have somebody in late May, early June saying, oh, you know what, it might still snow. Again,
Well,
people-
historically,
again,
we
but-
have had snow in April. We have not had snow
Right.
other than hail, but I don't think we ever had hail that had to be plowed away. I think maybe we put April 15th and cut out the last measurable, since nobody can project in advance when the last one will be. You agree?
I believe March is an acceptable timeframe. Most of the companies that do this, do the snow plowing are also usually doing landscaping, and by March, they're already preparing their vehicles for the upcoming spring cleanup season. So,
Yeah, I think what you're trying to say is if there wasn't any snow at all in March, March
we can
31st
ask
is
somebody
a
to
good
remove it
day.
if it's becoming an issue, yes.
Right.
Yeah, if it's been, since February, we've had temperatures in the 50s and 60s, we can ask them to remove it a little earlier.
Alderman Wesley.
But you would remove the last measurable snowfall.
Sure, we could take that out.
Wait a minute then, what are we removing?
We could just make it, we could make it that it be removed by March 31st.
Just that flat date?
We could do that.
Does everybody agree with that?
Sure.
Alderman Knipe?
No, we've actually had some measurable snows. I remember we had one year almost every Tuesday through the middle of April, we had, 7, 8 to 10 inches of snowfall. It was gone, right shortly after, but on those days. I don't think April 15th is stretching it that far. Besides that, and they pay their tax, they could take their plows off.
Who would agree with April 15th? Raise your hands. It's okay.
Fine.
I think that's a good compromise, because that way too, as Ross had alluded to, it'll also be a judgment call when the inspector is out there too.
Alderman Wesley, you had a comment?
Yeah, I have the question on number 5 about the stuff being in the back of the pickup truck. What happens if a guy has a business and his truck's loading masonry work, okay? And most places go and pick up their material the night before. How does that fall under here if you go out at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, the guy ends up getting sick and don't go to his job, and he's got the stuff in the back of his pickup truck? How do you address that concern?
Again, if it's something along this nature, it would be something that we would obviously receive a complaint on, first of all, if it were a regular occurring incident. If there's a one time where, yes, they picked up a material the night before and they didn't, for whatever reason, go to work that next day due to illness or weather, we can work with them regarding that. But if it becomes a regular occurrence that every day they have a vehicle stored on the property with material in the bed of the truck, we're gonna work with them on a solution.
No, but you know what? A lot of contractors, I'll tell you, goes to the yard the night before to pick up their materials.
Right.
And that's an everyday occurrence with construction people, masonry people and all that. So, and roofing people go and pick up their material like the night before. That would be pretty hard to enforce in that case.
In that case, yes. But again, we're talking about someone in this particular case, what we're really talking about are extreme violations of the ordinance. What we're really looking at here are gonna be the scrap metal dealers that don't empty the truck before the end of the day, the landscaper who doesn't empty the grass.
So now we're going to hand and pick who we,
No, we're not hand picking on it. It's, what we're saying is we do have, this regulation will allow us to use some judgment also. If it's a recognizable fact that it's an everyday occurrence, that person needs to find a different solution to that. If it's an occasional occurrence where they were stuck in a situation, they needed to get something home, we can work with them regarding that.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, you can park that truck inside the garage
Correct,
rather
if
than
it's an
leaving it
everyday
outside.
occurrence.
Alderman Lewitton.
This is the second time that you've raised the words administrative relief orally. I'd like you to then find a clause, a place for the clause in writing that there shall be administrative relief for special situations and a procedure for calling in.
We can address that under the entire zoning code rewrite, yes, we'll definitely do that.
What section would you put it in?
We put it in the administration section of the zoning code.
What number would that be?
Well, we'll get to it.
You know,
He'll tell us when that time is.
We'll also cross-reference it in the parking section, off-street parking.
Any other questions about that section? Okay, section E.
This is pertaining to commercial vehicles that might have a refrigeration unit or other motorized compressor on the vehicle. If they're going to be stored on the site overnight, if they fit the size requirements, that compressor cannot be running all night unless it is in a garage. Nobody wants to be hearing that all night long on a nice spring or summer evening, to have a vehicle with a compressor running all night long.
Exactly. Any questions? Good. Number F.
Again, this is for where the equipment and storage should be. Again, if it's on a, it should be enclosed in a garage, and at no time shall any equipment stored on a trailer or equipment which can be attached to a commercial vehicle that has an engine or compressor be allowed to idle while stored in a residential district, and that any vehicles or equipment that's stored or to be loaded onto a vehicle that does not have rubber tires cannot be done so in the public street.
Such as, what are you
A
thinking?
backhoe, a
of?
small backhoe. If
Oh,
somebody
okay.
had one of those that had the tank tracks on it, it shouldn't
Okay.
be loaded and unloaded on the public street.
Everybody agree? Good. Section G.
Going into recreational vehicles, the maximum height is 13 feet. The maximum width is 8'6", again excluding the mirrors, and the maximum length is 35 feet when measured from front bumper to back bumper.
Where did you get those numbers?
That's the size using the Winnebago design standards for their vehicles. That's what would be considered their typical vehicle.
Okay.
It's not the large RV bus, the full, if you will, the tour bus, but it is the regular sized Winnebago. Also, or open recreational vehicles and trailers not stored within a structure shall be a maximum of 16 feet long when measured to the hitch to the back bumper or of the equipment stored on the trailer, and shall have no ancillary racks on there.
Questions, comments? Okay.
This does not apply to vehicles parked on commercial land.
Correct. Again, this
Yes,
is purely
Alderman.
stored in the record. This is when you're
Yes.
storing it on your own personal property. If you're storing it in a commercial vehicle lot, there is no regulation regarding this.
This whole thing is residential. Alderman Winger, do you have a question?
Sure, thank you. Are we aware of any vehicles that are in Wooddale residential with this size? And if so, how do we plan on dealing with that for someone who already has a vehicle like this?
I'm unaware of anybody that has the actual tour, the full tour bus size RV. If we do notice them, we will work with the property owners to a timetable that's agreeable to all to have that vehicle located or stored somewhere else.
You'll see them come into town, people will clean them out, get them ready, and then they'll be gone again. So they might come in 3, 4, 5 days. Generally, there's a call on them.
Okay,
We'll go out and address it, but they usually come out pretty quick.
So they can't keep it by their side of their house all year around? Oh, we're getting to that section, okay. Mr. Noack?
If I may, Chairman Shockey, I'd like to address Alderman Winger's question about if we have any knowledge of people in Wooddale that do have those types of vehicles, the type of tour bus. We do have one individual on Forest View. As Forest View, he has built a garage, keeps it enclosed in the garage. The second individual we know of keeps it stored out of town.
Okay, section H.
Recreational vehicle standards, this is pertaining to where, some additional requirements regarding recreational vehicles, and this would specify that any recreational vehicle that is greater than 8 feet in height, but obviously less than 13, because 13 is our maximum height, shall be parked or stored in the rear yard only. Again, if you have a larger Winnebago-type RV, you don't want to be obstructing everyone's view. If your neighbor's looking out of their windows or down the sidewalk with this large vehicle, that should be parked in the rear yard if possible. If it can't be, then they do need to find other means for storage.
Ross, this number one now, I'm trying to get it in my mind. If it's greater than 8 feet but less than 13 feet?
Right. 13 feet is our maximum height of all our recreational vehicles that we would permit in the community. However, what we're stating here is that if the vehicle is over 8 feet in height, which is the maximum height of our commercial vehicle also, if it's over that 8 feet in height, in no way should that vehicle be stored in the front of the property. In that case, that vehicle would have to be stored in the rear of the property.
Okay. Alderman Wesley.
I have one question. And I know there's one person in my ward that comes in from Florida and they spend time with their family members for probably 4 or 5 weeks. And they have one of these big units and they park it on the side of their house. Are you trying to tell me that they cannot park it there for 4 or 5 or for a week or two because they're visiting family members, and we're going to tell them they can't visit their family members and they have to store it somewhere else. I know for a fact that I have one in my ward that does that.
Again, we believe we address that with the regulations in here, and that if it's going to be there for an extended period of time, they're going to need to be connecting that vehicle to gas, water, electric. That is also prohibited. That becomes a health issue, a safety issue for the community, and something that we're not interested in having. So if there are some people that have vehicle relatives come in and essentially are using it as a hotel service, a hotel.
But they are not. But they park it on their property.
Right. But again, they would need that at that point, if they're going to be there that long, they would need to have electric or gas or water or sewer hookups to it that can become a health and safety issue for the entire community. And at that point, we would need to regulate that vehicle.
Anybody else? Okay, that took care of number 2 and H.
Yes.
Go on to the next.
Moving on to 3 is that parking and stored recreational vehicles should not be used for living or sleeping purposes. Again, this is a health and safety issue. With moving on to 4, they should not be used as accessory structures, meaning that if you have a recreational vehicle, it should be used for recreational purposes. It shouldn't be used to put your lawnmower and gardening equipment in. Moving on to 5, if it has wheels, it needs to have wheels at all time. If you're taking the wheels off, it's now not a vehicle that's in mobile condition, or if it's not stored on a trailer that is ready to be moved, it shouldn't be there. The recreational vehicles and trailers need to be properly licensed. It's same as any vehicle stored within the community. If it's in the community, it needs to have a proper license plate. And the vehicle, if it's a recreational vehicle, again, trying to eliminate the fact that sometimes, occasionally, there have been people that have used it essentially as an extra storage shed in their yard. The recreational vehicle should be used for recreational purposes, or tried to be used for recreational purposes at least one time a year. The recreational vehicle, moving on to 8, the recreational equipment stored on a recreational trailer shall be screened from public view by means of a fence, a landscaped hedge, or covers which are designed and manufactured for covering the equipment or trailer. So again, snowmobiles, boats, what have you, should have a proper fitting cover over them if they're visible from public view, visible in the public view, or be behind a fence or some other means to screen it from the neighbors and the general public. And recreational vehicles may be stored in the front yard only when the equipment stored upon the trailer is being utilized for that season. Example, snowmobiles in the winter season and boats in the summer season. If you have snowmobiles in the summertime, they should be either stored in the rear of the property or at an off-site location.
Questions, comments? Alderman Lewitton.
Getting back to commercial locations,
Residential.
I know.
Talking residential.
but if they're on commercial, can they plug in to the electrical?
Again, that would be an electric, addressed by our electric code. It's a temporary electric hookup that is only permitted for certain time frames and certain uses. If it's used for living, it cannot be utilized for living and sleeping purposes, hooked up on a temporary electric.
But they could do it for one day.
To clean the vehicle, to get it rowdy, yes.
You know, most of our ordinances are taken care of by Mr. Johnson when there's a complaint. And this is a good, I think, the best basis I've seen for recreational and commercial vehicles that we've had put in front of us. And if somebody is not doing what's in the code here for a day or so, I don't think there's going to be a problem with it. But if it's a constant thing and becomes a public nuisance, then they get the complaint, they will do something about it. So, we're writing it all out here, but there's little variances that our inspector will put into it, and it's not black and white completely. Okay?
I feel that a clause of administrative relief should satisfy my concerns about those things which crop up on an irregular, short-term basis, as long as we have an administrative staff that interprets it in a lenient manner.
Well, it's just like our parking regulations, that they can't park after 2 o'clock at night on the street. Now, all they have to do is call the police department, and they get permission for a day or 2 days, even sometimes a week, I understand. So it's, it's not for the whole year, or it's not for 6 months or something. So again, there's some leeway. So I don't know if we really need to put in some kind of variation, or if we're gonna have people coming in and saying, well, can I get a variance for 2 days for this or something like that? That'll be
They do it
taken
on
care of by
all that,
staff.
so.
Yeah, exactly.
But Ross said he would put it in.
We'll put it in the zoning code rewrite that we're currently doing.
Okay, any other questions? All right. Alderman Wesley, did you have a?
No.
Okay. I'll make a motion then to recommend to the council that we adopt these new regulations for commercial and recreational vehicles for the city of Wooddale.
As amended by our conversation.
As amended with that 2 points. The date of the year for plows and the administrative thing in the back. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I would like to then ask for an adjournment of our meeting of November 13th of Planning, Zoning, and Building Committee. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
5 minutes. I'm calling it a 5-minute recess. Call the finance chair to order. Let the minutes reflect Mr. Coles and Mr. Nuzio has arrived for this meeting. I need a motion to approve the minutes from October 23rd, 2008.
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Report and recommendation of 6 months review of community development beautification program. As you know, I brought this up in the last meeting. I thought it was going under planning and zoning, but it got kicked back for finance, which is fine. I think Mr. Johnson is going to do a little presentation over this program, or someone's going to do it. The reason why I brought this program up is it was a 6 months trial that we passed. And in your packet today, you guys received, you received it in your packet of what it has cost so far and what fines we have still outstanding. I did have a meeting with Roger and Mr. Johnson about this. I did have a few concerns. And Roger, did everyone get this letter tonight from Mary Dixon?
Yes, Chairman Wesley, everyone should have had one on the dais. If they didn't, I'll certainly provide them with one.
Okay.
I
Could you,
can paraphrase that if you.
all right, could you paraphrase the letter that you received? And then could you comment on this program, how it actually is supposed to operate
Sure.
and that perspective?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman Wesley. As Alderman Wesley had mentioned, this program was initially set up, or rather also, as you can recall, it began in May of this year. And some of the purposes behind the actual creation of this adjudication hearing was the fact that we were looking for a variety of reasons to propose as a cost savings, which has to do with the benefits of not having our staff travel to Addison Field Court. We reduced the court time and the travel time. We also have, by doing it here at City Hall, we have a convenient location for not only staff, but for our residents. And that way, we have a centralized location where everyone is familiar with it. We also wanted to reduce the amount of time for processing these cases. This also is an advantage of the administrative adjudication. We also wanted to, importantly, reduce multiple court continuances, which Mr. Johnson has had to accept over the last few years, some of which have been numerous delays which could extend the court hearing some 9 months. Another area that we wanted to look at too was the possibility of achieving a revenue source, not necessarily making a whole lot of money, but we wanted to see if there was an alternative to what the circuit court has presently in their system, whereby we only get a percentage of their fines that are paid at the 18th Circuit Court. The city typically would get approximately a 40% return. If the fine was $100, we'd get approximately 40. We were looking to see if we couldn't do better than that. With the administrative adjudication, the goal is to naturally receive 100% of the fine revenue minus our administrative costs. And right now, in accordance with the memo that you all have received copies of, we're at a break-even point with this program. The glaring statistic that Alderman Wesley is correct on is the fact that we have outstanding fines in excess of $13,000. Right now, we have, oh, by the way, in the year 2008, 2009, for that budget year, there was $15,000 budgeted for that, for the administrative adjudication. We have not used any money, any part of that line item to date. If I can, I'd like to go into some of the other aspects that Alderman Wesley had alluded to with respect to the city attorney. What we're trying to do is seek through their counsel a way of increasing the collection of these outstanding $13,000 in fines. The memo that Mary Dixon had provided to us is one way of attempting to collect these unpaid fines. We are somewhat limited in what we can do because we are not a home rule community. She had suggested that we process through the 18th Judicial Circuit Court a filing in the court creating an order whereby we would have them, we would have our top 10 cases or our 10 violators with the most outstanding amount of fines currently. And she would like to be able to present this as a single case with those particular 10 instances being focused on. What this would do would certainly save us money in the long run by not trying to pursue these individually. By taking the 10 of them, we certainly would greatly reduce the expense of the legal fees. The drawback is, if there is a drawback, is the fact that we haven't done this before, and neither has Bond Dixon. And that's why she's suggesting this be a test case. Going over to explain a little bit about what other cities have done or attempted to do, there are cities that, and towns that are able, because of their home rule status, attach these fines to the individual's water bill. And in some instances, they can attach them to the annual real estate taxes. Well, we unfortunately cannot do that. So what we're doing is we're reaching out to the city attorney for their expertise in trying to collect these fines more readily than we have had limited success in doing as of today. So the other thing that I wanted to mention too, one other area there that towns can collect this would be also through the real estate transfer stamp program. That again too would necessitate us being able to secure these fines at the date of closing on that property. But that also too sometimes is a long time to wait for the money. And another way of doing it is a collection agency. I do have